Jake Martinez stared at the red warning light flashing on his command screen. The emergency signal from Earth Command had woken him from his sleep just minutes ago. As captain of the UES Liberty Bell, Jake was used to getting urgent messages, but this one was different. This one made his stomach twist into knots. The communication officer, Amy Chen, turned from her station with wide eyes. Her usually calm voice shook as she spoke. Amy had been with Jake for 3 years, flying through space and visiting new worlds. But she had never looked this scared. Captain, Earth Command is sending another message. They say we have less than 24 hours to respond to the alien demand. Jake rubbed his tired eyes and looked around the small bridge of his ship. The Liberty Bell was not a warship. It was built for diplomacy and peaceful contact with new species. Jake had been chosen to captain it because of his background. Before joining the space fleet, he had run a food truck on the streets of Los Angeles. Earth Command thought his experience dealing with all kinds of people would help him talk to aliens. Now, Jake wondered if they had made a terrible mistake. Carlos Rodriguez, the ship engineer, pulled up the alien message on the main screen. The image showed a massive spacecraft, bigger than any human ship ever built. It looked like a dark metal mountain floating in space, covered with weapons and strange glowing symbols. They call themselves the Zephyrian Empire, Carlos said, reading from his instruments. Their fleet has 47 ships, Captain. Each one is 10 times bigger than our largest battleship. Dr. Lisa Park, the team scientist who studied alien life, stood beside Carlos, looking at the data. Her face was pale as she read the numbers. Lisa had spent years learning about different alien species, but she had never seen anything like this. The message is clear, Lisa said. They want Earth's Emperor to bring tribute to their leader within 1 day. If we refuse, they will destroy our planet. Jake felt his heart racing. Earth did not have an emperor. Humans had presidents and prime ministers and other elected leaders, but no single ruler. The concept of tribute was also strange to modern human society. In the old days, conquered peoples would give gold and valuable items to their conquerors. But that was ancient history. What kind of tribute do they want? Jake asked. Amy shook her head. The message does not say. It just demands that our emperor present appropriate tribute to Overlord Vexthara, their supreme leader. Jake stood up and paced around the small bridge. Through the windows, he could see stars scattered across the darkness of space. Somewhere out there, an alien fleet waited for humanity's response. On Earth, billions of people continued their daily lives, unaware that their existence hung in the balance. Where are our real diplomats? Jake asked. Surely Earth Command has people trained for this kind of situation. Carlos checked his communication systems. All the senior diplomatic staff are away on missions to other star systems. The nearest team is 6 months away, Earth Command says. We are the only official representatives close enough to respond in time. Jake almost laughed, but the situation was too serious. He had started his career selling tacos from a truck outside office buildings and construction sites. His customers had been hungry workers looking for a quick lunch, not alien overlords demanding tribute from entire planets. They made me a temporary ambassador 3 years ago, just so I could sign trade agreements with mining colonies, Jake said. I never expected to represent all of humanity. Dr. Park pulled up information about the Zephyrian Empire on her computer. The files were mostly blank. Humanity had never encountered this species before. Their technology appeared far more advanced than human science, and their ships suggested a military culture focused on conquest. I can find almost nothing about their society, Lisa said. We know they have conquered dozens of other worlds, but the details are classified or missing. There are no records of what kind of tribute they typically demand. Amy turned back to her communication station as another message arrived. This one included coordinates for a meeting location near the edge of the solar system. The alien fleet would send 1 ship to meet Earth's representative. Jake would have 12 hours to travel there and present tribute To Overlord Vexthera. 12 hours, Jake repeated. Not enough time to return to Earth and get proper diplomatic supplies. Carlos nodded. Even if we left right now, we could barely reach the meeting coordinates in time. There would be no chance to stop anywhere along the way. Jake walked to his private quarters and opened his storage locker. Inside were his personal belongings from 3 years of space travel. Most items were practical things like clothing and toiletries. At the bottom of the locker sat a sealed container marked emergency rations. Jake opened the container and smiled, despite the terrible situation. Inside were vacuum-sealed packages of spices, dried meat, corn tortillas, and other ingredients. When Jake had first joined the space fleet, he had packed these items as a reminder of home. During long missions, he would sometimes cook simple meals that reminded him of his food truck days. The ingredients had never been used. Space fleet regulations required all crew members to eat standard nutritional meals provided by the ship's systems. Jake's personal cooking supplies had simply stayed in storage, forgotten until now. What kind of tribute could possibly satisfy an alien emperor? Jake wondered aloud. He thought about the human items stored in the ship's cargo hold. There were some examples of Earth art, music recordings, and scientific instruments intended for trade with colonies. None of these seemed impressive enough for a being who ruled multiple star systems. Jake returned to the bridge with the container of cooking ingredients. His crew looked at him with confusion as he set the container on the command table. "Captain, what are you planning?" Amy asked. Jake opened the container and showed them the spices and other food items inside. "I have been thinking about this all wrong. We keep trying to figure out what the Zephyrians want, but maybe the question should be what humans can offer that no other species has given them." Carlos picked up a package of cumin and examined it. "You think they want our food?" "Not exactly," Jake said. "But think about it. They have conquered dozens of worlds and taken tribute from all of them. They probably have more gold, technology, and valuable materials than they know what to do with. What they might not have is something completely new and unexpected." Dr. Park looked skeptical. "You want to give an alien overlord a home-cooked meal?" Jake nodded. "Not just any meal. The best tacos I know how to make. Something that represents human culture and creativity in a way that no amount of gold or technology could match." Amy stared at him. "Captain, this could start an interstellar war, or it could start something entirely different," Jake replied. "We have 12 hours to reach their ship and present tribute. I can use that time to prepare something that no alien has ever experienced before." The crew exchanged worried glances, but they had no better ideas. Earth Command had given Jake full authority to represent humanity in this first contact situation. His decision would determine the fate of his species. Jake sealed the container of ingredients and headed for the ship's small kitchen, set course for the meeting coordinates. "And Amy, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them that humanity's tribute will be ready on time." As the Liberty Bell changed course toward the alien fleet, Jake began planning the most important meal of his life. Somewhere in the darkness ahead, Overlord Vexthera waited to judge whether humanity deserved to survive. Jake had no idea that his decision to share a simple taco would change the course of galactic history forever. The alien ship loomed before them like a dark metal mountain floating in space. Jake Martinez stood on the bridge of the Liberty Bell, watching as their small vessel approached the massive Zephyrian dreadnought. The alien ship was so large that it blocked out the stars behind it. Amy Chen piloted their ship toward a docking bay that opened like a giant mouth in the side of the alien vessel. The opening was big enough to hold 50 ships the size of the Liberty Bell. Jake felt very small as they entered the alien craft. "Atmospheric readings show the air is breathable for humans," Dr. Lisa Park reported from her scanner. "Temperature is slightly warm, but within acceptable ranges." Carlos Rodriguez monitored the ship's systems as magnetic fields guided them to a landing platform. Their technology is incredible, Captain. I can see energy patterns I do not understand at all. Jake adjusted the portable cooking unit strapped to his back. The device was normally used for emergency food preparation during long missions. He had modified it to work with his personal ingredients. In his hands, he carried a sealed container with everything needed to make authentic carnitas tacos. Remember the plan, Jake told his crew. Follow their customs as much as possible, but do not let them separate us. We stay together no matter what happens. The landing platform shuddered as their ship touched down. Through the windows, Jake could see aliens approaching their vessel. The Zephyrians were tall beings with skin that looked like living crystal. Each one had 4 arms and moved with precise, military movements. A communication signal reached their ship. The voice that spoke was deep and echoed strangely, but the words were in perfect English. Humans of the 3rd planet, you will exit your vessel and follow the honor guard to the presence of Overlord Vextera. You will bring your tribute and speak only when commanded. Jake took a deep breath and activated the ship's exit ramp. Here we go. The air inside the alien ship felt thick and heavy. Strange lights pulsed along the walls in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The honor guard consisted of 12 Zephyrian warriors, each one carrying weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. Jake and his crew walked between the guards through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Along the walls, Jake saw displays that showed star maps of conquered territories. Dozens of different worlds were marked with Zephyrian symbols. How many species have they conquered? Amy whispered. Too many, Lisa replied quietly. The corridor opened into a vast chamber that took Jake's breath away. The ceiling disappeared into darkness high above them. Along the walls stood representatives of dozens of alien species, all watching the humans, with various expressions of curiosity, fear, and pity. At the far end of the chamber sat a throne made from the twisted metal of destroyed spaceships. The being who occupied the throne was larger than the other Zephyrians, with crystal skin that glowed with inner light. This had to be Overlord Vext, HARA. Jake counted at least 200 aliens in the chamber. Some looked like they had been prisoners for years. Others wore the clothing and symbols of their home worlds, suggesting they were permanent ambassadors or hostages. The honor guard led Jake and his crew down a long walkway toward the throne. With each step, Jake felt the weight of hundreds of alien eyes watching him. Some of the creatures looked sympathetic, as if they knew what fate awaited the humans. When they reached the base of the throne, the guards commanded them to kneel. Jake looked up at Overlord Vextera and felt his heart racing. The alien ruler was at least 9 feet tall, with crystal skin that shifted colors as he moved. His 4 arms were decorated with jewelry made from the bones of defeated enemies. So, Vextera spoke, his voice echoing through the chamber. The primitive species of the 3rd planet sends 4 representatives instead of an emperor. How disappointing. Jake stood up slowly, ignoring the angry sounds from the guards. Great Overlord, I am Captain Jake Martinez, official representative of humanity and Earth. I have come to present tribute as you requested. Vextera leaned forward on his throne. You dare stand in my presence without permission. I mean no disrespect, Jake said. In human culture, we show respect by standing tall and meeting challenges directly. I bring tribute that represents the greatest achievement of my species. Murmurs rippled through the assembled aliens. Many had probably never seen anyone speak so boldly to the Overlord. Jake's crew looked terrified, but they stood behind him in support. Your greatest achievement, Vextera repeated. Other species have brought me rare minerals worth more than your entire planet. They have offered me weapons that could destroy stars. They have given me the service of their greatest warriors and scientists. What could your primitive world possibly offer that would interest me? Jake unslung the portable cooking unit from his back and set it on the floor. The action caused several guards to raise their weapons, but Vextera held up one hand to stop them. I bring you something no other species in your empire has ever offered, Jake said. I bring you the art and science of cuisine. I bring you flavors and experiences that will awaken senses you never knew you possessed. The chamber fell completely silent. Jake could feel the confusion and disbelief radiating from the assembled aliens. Even his own crew looked uncertain about his plan. Vexthera's crystal skin flickered with new colors. You mock me with talk of food. We Zephyrians absorb nutrients through our skin from the energy of our ship's reactors. We have no need for primitive consumption rituals. That is exactly why this tribute is valuable, Jake replied. He began setting up the cooking unit, moving slowly so the guards would not see him as a threat. Every species you have conquered has given you things you already understand. I offer you an entirely new way to experience existence. Jake activated the heating element of the cooking unit and opened his container of ingredients. The smell of dried spices filled the air around them. Several aliens in the chamber moved closer, their expressions changing from boredom to curiosity. I will prepare for you carnitas tacos, Jake announced. This dish represents thousands of years of human culinary evolution. It combines techniques of cooking, seasoning, and preparation that turn simple ingredients into something greater than the sum of their parts. Vexthera watched with growing interest as Jake began heating oil in a small pan. The pork shoulder he had brought was already seasoned with cumin, oregano, and other spices. As it began to cook, the aroma spread through the vast chamber. Jake had not expected the reaction that followed. The Zephyrians in the chamber began moving restlessly, their crystal skin shifting through colors he had never seen before. Even the guards lowered their weapons slightly, distracted by the unfamiliar sensations. What is this strange effect? Vexthera demanded. What power do you wield? No power, except knowledge, Jake replied, as he turned the meat in the pan. I am creating what humans call flavor. It is a combination of chemistry, art, and culture that affects the senses in ways that pure nutrition cannot. Dr. Park stepped forward beside Jake. Great Overlord, if I may explain. The process Captain Martinez is demonstrating involves the Maillard reaction, where proteins and sugars create complex aromatic compounds when heated. These compounds can trigger sensory responses even in species that do not normally consume food. Jake smiled at Lisa's scientific explanation, but he continued cooking. He warmed corn tortillas on another part of the heating unit and prepared fresh salsa with tomatoes, onions, and cilantro that he had grown in the ship's small garden. The smell of cooking food had now filled the entire chamber. Jake noticed that many of the alien spectators had moved closer, drawn by curiosity about the strange ritual they were witnessing. This is impossible, Vexthera said, but his voice had lost its commanding tone. We do not understand what you are doing to our senses. Jake plated the first taco with careful attention to presentation. He arranged the carnitas on the tortilla, added fresh salsa and cilantro, and folded it into the traditional shape. The finished product looked simple, but the aroma was extraordinary. Great Overlord, Jake said, holding up the taco, I present to you the tribute of humanity, not gold or weapons, or territory, but the gift of flavor itself. This represents our ability to find joy and meaning in the simple act of nourishment. Vexthera stared at the small folded tortilla in Jake's hands. Around the chamber, hundreds of aliens watched in complete silence. The moment felt suspended in time, as if the entire galaxy was waiting to see what would happen next. Jake stepped forward and placed the taco on a small plate at the base of the throne. I invite you to experience something no ruler in the history of your empire has ever tasted. Overlord Vexthera stared at the small folded tortilla on the plate before his throne. The chamber remained completely silent as hundreds of alien beings watched their supreme ruler consider this strange tribute from the human species. Jake Martinez stood perfectly still, trying to control his racing heartbeat. Everything depended on the next few moments. If Vexthera rejected the taco, humanity would face destruction. If he accepted it, Jake had no idea what would happen next. The Zephyrian ruler rose from his throne, towering over everyone in the chamber. His crystal skin flickered through colors that Jake had never seen before. With one of his forearms, Vexthera reached down and picked up the taco. "You claim this small object contains power that no other species has offered me," Vexthera said. "Explain how such a thing is possible." Jake chose his words carefully. "Great Overlord, what you hold represents more than food. It contains the history of human civilization. The corn in the tortilla was first cultivated by our ancestors 10,000 years ago. The spices came from plants that humans carried across oceans to trade with distant peoples. The techniques used to prepare the meat were passed down through generations of families." Amy Chen watched nervously as Vexthera examined the taco from different angles. The alien ruler seemed puzzled by its simple appearance. Around the chamber, other Zephyrians leaned forward with obvious curiosity. "But most importantly," Jake continued, "this food is meant to be shared. In human culture, we believe that eating together creates bonds between people. We offer food to guests as a sign of friendship and respect." Vexthera's crystal skin shifted to a deep blue color. Friendship. An interesting concept from a species we could destroy with a single command. "Yes," Jake replied. "That is exactly why this tribute has value. Any conquered species can offer you wealth or weapons out of fear. Only a free species can offer you friendship." Dr. Lisa Park stepped forward slightly. "Great Overlord, if I may add something from a scientific perspective. The compounds created by cooking these ingredients will trigger sensory responses in your nervous system that you have never experienced. Your species has evolved beyond the need for food consumption, but you still retain the biological capacity to taste." Vexthera looked at the taco again, then back at Jake. "You suggest that I consume this object. I suggest that you experience it," Jake said. "Take a small bite and discover what your species has been missing for millions of years." Carlos Rodriguez whispered to Amy, "I cannot believe the captain is actually trying to get an alien overlord to eat a taco. I cannot believe it might actually work," Amy whispered back. Vexthera raised the taco toward his mouth, then paused. "If this is some form of poison or weapon, your species will suffer greatly before they die." "It is not poison," Jake said firmly. "It is joy in edible form." The Zephyrian ruler took a small, cautious bite of the taco. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Vexthera's entire body began to glow with brilliant light. His crystal skin cycled through colors so rapidly that it looked like a rainbow made of living gemstones. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Vexthera stumbled backward, nearly falling over his throne. The other Zephyrians in the chamber rushed forward, alarmed by their leader's condition. "What have you done?" one of the guards shouted, raising his weapon toward Jake. But Vexthera held up all four arms to stop them. His voice, when he spoke, was filled with wonder. "I can taste it. After 3 million years of evolution, I can actually taste something." The assembled aliens began murmuring among themselves in dozens of different languages. Many looked confused or frightened by their ruler's strange behavior. Vexthera took another bite of the taco, larger this time. The colors in his skin became even more intense. "The flavors are incredibly complex. I can identify the meat, the spices, the vegetables, but together they create something entirely new." Jake felt relief flooding through his body. "That is the art of cooking, Great Overlord. Taking simple ingredients and combining them in ways that create experiences greater than their individual parts." "This sensation," Vexthera said, finishing the entire taco, "it is unlike anything in our empire." "How many humans possess this knowledge?" "All of us," Jake replied. "Every human learns to cook in some form. We have millions of different recipes and techniques. Each region of our world has developed its own style of cuisine over thousands of years." Vexthera sat back down on his throne, but his posture had changed completely. Instead of the rigid, intimidating ruler from before, He now looked relaxed and curious. "Show me more," Vextera commanded. "I must understand the full extent of this tribute." Jake smiled and returned to his portable cooking unit. "I brought ingredients for several different preparations. Each one will give you a different experience." As Jake began preparing a second taco with different seasonings, word of what was happening spread through the alien ship's communication systems. Zephyrian officers and crew members began arriving in the chamber to witness the unprecedented event. Within an hour, the chamber was packed with aliens from dozens of species. All of them watched in fascination as Jake prepared different variations of his tacos. He made some with chicken, others with vegetables, each one seasoned differently to demonstrate the range of flavors possible. Vextera tasted each preparation with growing amazement. With every bite, his crystal skin displayed new colors and patterns. The other Zephyrians in the chamber began to look hungry for the first time in their evolutionary history. "This is remarkable," Vextera said after trying a taco with spicy salsa verde. "Each combination creates entirely different sensations. It is like discovering a new form of art." "That is exactly what it is," Jake said. "Humans consider cooking to be both art and science. We spend lifetimes perfecting recipes and techniques." One of the alien prisoners, a being that looked like a large insect, approached cautiously. "Great Overlord, might your humble servants also experience this human magic?" Vextera considered the request, then nodded. "Yes, let all who serve the Empire taste what the humans have brought us." Jake found himself cooking for dozens of different alien species. Each one reacted differently to the flavors, but all of them showed signs of profound amazement. Species that had been enemies for centuries stood side by side, sharing tacos and discussing the incredible sensations they were experiencing. Dr. Park documented everything on her recording device. "Captain, this is the most significant cultural exchange in human history. You are literally changing how these species experience reality." As the hours passed, the atmosphere in the chamber transformed completely. What had begun as a formal tribute ceremony had become something like a festival. Aliens who had never spoken to each other were now sharing food and conversation. Vextera called Jake to approach his throne. "Human Captain, this tribute has exceeded all expectations. In 3 million years of conquest, no species has offered us anything that expanded our understanding of existence itself. Does this mean humanity will be spared destruction?" Jake asked. Vextera's crystal skin flickered with what Jake was learning to recognize as amusement. "Destruction. The concept seems wasteful now. A species capable of creating such experiences should be preserved and studied." "We prefer friendship to study," Jake said boldly. "Friendship," Vextera repeated, as if tasting the word, along with the flavors still lingering from the tacos. "Yes, I begin to understand this concept as well." The Zephyrian ruler stood and addressed the entire chamber. "Let it be recorded that the human species has offered tribute beyond price. They have given us the gift of flavor, and through it, the possibility of joy itself." Jake looked around the chamber at hundreds of aliens from across the galaxy, all of them united by the simple act of sharing a meal together. He realized that his decision to bring cooking ingredients instead of gold or weapons had not just saved humanity. It had accidentally started a revolution that would change the entire Zephyrian Empire. 3 months had passed since Jake Martinez first served tacos to Overlord Vextera. Now he stood on the bridge of his new ship, the Cosmic Kitchen, watching as another alien world appeared on the view screen. This was his 15th planet in the expanding Zephyrian Empire, and each visit had been more remarkable than the last. Amy Chen, now serving as Jake's second-in-command, checked their approach vector. "We are entering orbit around Brutanus Prime, homeworld of the Brutani warrior clans. Population approximately 2 billion. Carlos Rodriguez monitored the ship's expanded kitchen facilities. The Cosmic Kitchen was 10 times larger than the Liberty Bell, with cooking equipment designed to accommodate dozens of different alien physiologies. "All cooking systems are ready, Captain." We have fresh ingredients loaded for Brutani dietary requirements. Dr. Lisa Park reviewed her notes on the Brutani species. They have been part of the Zephyrian Empire for over 500 years. Their culture is based entirely on military conquest and physical combat. They consider cooking to be work for slaves and prisoners. Jake nodded as he studied the planet below. The surface was covered with military installations and training facilities. According to Zephyrian records, the Brutani had never developed any form of cuisine beyond basic nutrition bars for their soldiers. That is about to change, Jake said. Over the past 3 months, Jake had become something unprecedented in galactic history. Vexthera had created a new position for him, Master of Culinary Arts for the Zephyrian Empire. Jake's mission was to travel to every world in the Empire and introduce the concept of cooking to species that had never experienced flavor. The results had been extraordinary. On each world Jake visited, the introduction of cuisine had triggered massive cultural changes. Warlike species discovered the meditative aspects of bread making. Coldly logical civilizations became fascinated with the complex chemistry of fermentation. Parasitic races learned to appreciate sustainable agriculture. Incoming transmission from the planet's surface, Amy reported. The Brutani War Council demands to know why we are in their space. Jake activated the communication system. This is Captain Jake Martinez of the Cosmic Kitchen. I come with greetings from Overlord Vexthera, and gifts for the brave Brutani people. The voice that responded was deep and aggressive. We are General Crackster of the Brutani First Legion. We know of your strange magic, human. Our warriors do not need your weakness-inducing rituals. I understand your concerns, General. May I suggest a demonstration for your war council? If my gifts prove worthless, I will leave your world immediately. There was a long pause before Crackster responded. You may land at the primary military complex, but know that if you attempt to weaken our warriors, you will face combat trial. Jake smiled as he ended the communication. Every species had reacted with suspicion at first. The Brutani would be no different once they experienced their first taste of real food. The Cosmic Kitchen landed at a military spaceport, surrounded by training grounds. Through the windows, Jake could see Brutani soldiers practicing combat maneuvers. The aliens were large and heavily muscled, with thick armor-like skin and multiple arms designed for wielding weapons. General Crackster met them at the landing ramp with an honor guard of 50 warriors. The Brutani leader was even more imposing, in person, standing nearly 10 feet tall, with scars covering his visible skin. So you are the human who claims to possess power greater than conquest, Crackster said. You look small and weak. Appearances can be misleading, General, Jake replied. May I set up my equipment in a space where your council can observe? Crackster led them to a large training hall, where hundreds of Brutani warriors had gathered. Word of the humans' visit had spread quickly through the military complex. Jake could see curiosity mixed with skepticism in their expressions. Before I begin, Jake announced to the assembled warriors, I want to explain what I am offering. Every species in the galaxy has basic nutritional needs, but humans discovered something beyond mere nutrition. We learned to create joy through the act of eating. Several Brutani warriors laughed at this statement. Their culture viewed joy as a weakness that made soldiers soft and unreliable. Jake began setting up his portable kitchen in the center of the hall. For today's demonstration, I will prepare something called bread. This food requires patience, skill, and understanding of natural processes that take time to develop. Carlos and Lisa helped Jake arrange ingredients and equipment, while Amy documented the proceedings. Jake had learned that each alien species responded differently to various foods, so he always researched their biology and culture before choosing recipes. Bread making is one of humanity's oldest arts, Jake explained, as he mixed flour, water, yeast, and salt in a large bowl. It teaches patience, because the dough must rise slowly. It teaches precision, because the ingredients must be measured. Exactly. It teaches respect for natural processes, because you cannot rush the fermentation. General Crackster watched with obvious impatience. This seems like pointless ceremony. Our nutrition bars provide all necessary energy for combat. Your nutrition bars feed the body, Jake said as he began kneading the dough. This feeds something deeper. As Jake worked the dough with his hands, he explained the science behind the process. The mechanical action developed gluten proteins that would give the bread its structure. The yeast organisms were consuming sugars and producing gases that would make the dough rise. But more importantly, he explained the cultural significance. In human societies, bread making was often a communal activity. Families would gather to prepare dough together. The smell of baking bread made houses feel like homes. Several Brutani warriors moved closer to watch Jake's technique. Despite their skepticism, they seemed fascinated by the rhythmic process of kneading dough. Now we must wait, Jake said, covering the dough and setting it aside to rise. This is perhaps the most important lesson. Good things cannot be rushed. They require patience and faith in natural processes. While they waited for the dough to rise, Jake prepared other simple foods that did not require long cooking times. He made fresh salsa with vegetables, demonstrating how different combinations of ingredients could create complex flavors. The aroma of fresh herbs and spices began to fill the training hall. Jake noticed that the Brutani warriors were reacting to the smells with obvious interest, though they tried to hide their curiosity. After an hour, the bread dough had doubled in size. Jake shaped it into loaves and placed them in a portable oven. As the bread began to bake, the most incredible smell filled the entire hall. The reaction was immediate and profound. The Brutani warriors, who had spent their lives focused on combat and aggression, suddenly found themselves experiencing something completely new. The smell of baking bread triggered deep biological responses that their species had forgotten existed. "What is this effect?" General Crackster demanded. "What power are you wielding over my warriors?" "No power except knowledge," Jake replied. "The compounds released by baking bread naturally trigger pleasure responses in most biological nervous systems. Your species retained these capabilities, even though you stopped using them long ago." When the bread was finished baking, Jake removed the golden loaves from the oven. The crust crackled as it cooled, releasing even more aromatic compounds into the air. Jake cut thick slices of the warm bread and offered them to General Crackster and his officers. "This is my gift to the Brutani people. Not just food, but the knowledge of how to create experiences that bring joy without weakening the spirit." Crackster accepted a slice of bread with obvious reluctance. But when he took his first bite, his entire demeanor changed. The aggressive warrior leader stood perfectly still for several moments. His eyes closed as he experienced flavors his species had not known for thousands of years. "This is impossible," Crackster whispered. "How can something so simple create such powerful sensations?" "Because it is not simple," Jake explained. "It represents thousands of years of human knowledge about agriculture, chemistry, biology, and culture. Each bite contains the wisdom of countless generations." Other Brutani warriors began trying the bread, and each one reacted with the same amazement. The training hall, which had been filled with the sounds of military preparation, became quiet except for the soft sounds of aliens discovering the joy of truly tasting food. "I must learn this knowledge," General Crackster declared. "Not for conquest, but for understanding. Show us how to create these experiences for ourselves." Jake smiled and began teaching the Brutani warriors how to make bread dough. Within hours, the most feared military force in the sector was gathered around mixing bowls, learning to knead dough with the same dedication they had once applied to weapons training. As Jake watched alien warriors discovering the meditative aspects of bread making, he realized that his mission was changing the fundamental nature of the Zephyrian Empire. Species that had known only conquest for centuries were learning to find fulfillment in creation rather than destruction. But Jake also knew that not everyone in the Empire would welcome these changes. Somewhere among the stars, traditional military leaders were watching his progress with growing alarm, planning to stop the revolution before it could spread further. Jake Martinez woke up in a cold metal cell, his hands bound behind his back with energy restraints. His head throbbed from whatever weapon had knocked him unconscious during the attack on the cosmic kitchen. Through the bars of his cell, he could see Amy, Carlos, and Dr. Lisa in similar prison chambers. "Captain, are you awake?" Amy called out softly. "I am here," Jake replied, testing the strength of his restraints. The energy bonds were too powerful to break. "Is everyone hurt?" "We are alive," Carlos answered. "But I think we are in serious trouble." Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside their cells. A massive Zephyrian warrior approached, his crystal skin dark red with anger. Jake recognized him from intelligence reports as General Korthful, leader of the traditional military faction within the Empire. "So the human poison spreader awakens," Korthfel said. "Your corruption of our empire ends today." Jake stood up as steadily as he could manage. "General Korthful, I should have expected you would eventually make a move against the culinary program." "Program?" Korthful spat. "You call the systematic weakening of our warrior culture a program. Look what you have done to our empire." The general activated a holographic display showing scenes from across Zephyrian space. On dozens of worlds, former military installations had been converted into cooking schools and agricultural centers. Warrior species were tending gardens instead of training for combat. The mighty war machine that had conquered half the galaxy was grinding to a halt. "You have turned our greatest fighters into bakers and farmers," Korthfel continued. "The Brutani First Legion now spends more time kneading dough than practicing weapons drills. The Cerebrate attack fleets have abandoned their ships to study fermentation chemistry." Jake felt proud rather than ashamed of these changes. Those species have discovered that creation brings more satisfaction than destruction. They are happier than they have been in centuries. "Happiness is weakness," Korthfel roared. "A soft empire cannot defend itself against external threats. While our forces learn to make bread, our enemies prepare for invasion." Dr. Lisa spoke from her cell. "General, our research shows that the species embracing culinary arts are actually more stable and productive than before. Crime rates are down, innovation is up, and cooperation between former enemy groups has increased dramatically." Korthful ignored her words. "Today, I will execute all of you as enemies of the Empire. Then I will purge every world that has been infected by your food magic. The Zephyrian Empire will return to its proper path of conquest and expansion." "You cannot undo what has already begun," Jake said calmly. "Billions of beings across the galaxy have tasted real food for the first time. They will not willingly return to a life without flavor. They will do as they are commanded," Korthfel replied, "or they will be destroyed." The general left them alone in their cells while he prepared for the public execution. Jake had perhaps 6 hours before Korthfel carried out his threat. In that time, he had to find a way to escape and warn Overlord Vextera about the military coup. But as the hours passed, Jake began to hear unusual sounds from other parts of the ship, instead of the disciplined movements of military personnel. He heard what sounded like dozens of beings moving through the corridors with less organized purpose. Amy noticed it too. "Captain, does that sound like a rescue operation to you?" Before Jake could answer, the energy restraints on their cells suddenly deactivated. The prison doors slid open as the ship's computer systems were overridden from an external source. A familiar figure appeared in the corridor outside their cells. It was General Crackster of the Brutani, but he looked very different from the warrior Jake had first met months ago. Instead of military armor, Crackster wore an apron decorated with flower handprints. He carried a rolling pin instead of a weapon. "Master Jake," Crackster said with obvious relief, "we arrived just in time." "General Crackster, How did you find us? Every world you have visited sent ships when they learned of your capture, explained, as he helped free the humans from their restraints. The Cerebrites used their analytical skills to track Korthville's vessel. The agricultural colonies provided supplies for our rescue fleet. Jake followed Crackster through the corridors of the ship, amazed by what he saw. The rescue force consisted of representatives from dozens of species, all working together with unprecedented cooperation. Former enemies were coordinating their efforts to save the human who had taught them to cook. "This is incredible," Dr. Lisa whispered. "Species that fought wars for centuries are now allies because they share a common interest in culinary arts." They reached the ship's main hangar, where Jake saw the most remarkable sight of his career. Hundreds of small ships from across the Empire had surrounded Korthville's vessel, but instead of attacking with weapons, they were broadcasting something else entirely. "What are they transmitting?" Jake asked. Amy checked a communication device that Crackster had given her. "Recipes, Captain. They are sharing cooking instructions and food preparation techniques on all frequencies." Even more amazing, the transmissions were having an effect on Korthville's crew. Zephyrian soldiers throughout the ship were abandoning their posts to listen to the broadcasts. Many had never experienced real food, and the descriptions of flavors and cooking techniques were awakening desires they did not understand. Himself appeared in the hangar, surrounded by a small group of loyal guards. But Jake could see that even these elite warriors were distracted by the food broadcasts filling their communication systems. "This changes nothing," Korthville declared. "I will still purge the Empire of your weakness-inducing corruption." "No, you will not," said a new voice from the hangar entrance. Overlord Vexthura entered the hangar, but like Crackster, he looked very different from the intimidating ruler Jake had first met. Vexthura wore simple cooking clothes instead of imperial robes. His crystal skin glowed with warm, welcoming colors rather than the harsh military patterns of the past. "Vexthura," Korthville said, "you should not have come here. I am saving our empire from this human corruption. You are trying to destroy the best thing that has happened to our people in 3 million years, Vexthura replied. "Master Jake has given us something more valuable than all our conquered territories combined. He has given us joy." Korthville raised his weapon toward the Overlord. "Then you are as corrupted as the rest. I will restore proper leadership to the Empire." But before Korthville could fire, something unexpected happened. His own guards stepped away from him, laying down their weapons. The food broadcasts had finally reached them, and they were experiencing the same awakening that had transformed species across the galaxy. "General," one of the guards said, "perhaps we should try this food magic before we destroy it." Korthville found himself alone, surrounded by hundreds of beings who had chosen creation over destruction. Jake stepped forward, no longer afraid of the isolated general. "General Korthville, let me make you an offer. Allow me to prepare one meal for you. If you taste it and still believe that culinary arts make our people weak, I will voluntarily end the program and leave the Empire forever." Korthville looked around at the faces surrounding him. Even his most loyal followers were waiting to see what he would decide. Finally, he lowered his weapon. "One meal," he agreed. "But when it fails to impress me, you will keep your promise." Jake smiled and began setting up his portable cooking equipment in the middle of the hangar. He had spent months learning the tastes and preferences of different alien species. For Korthville, he chose something simple but perfect: chocolate chip cookies. As the cookies baked, the aroma filled the hangar with warmth and sweetness. Jake watched as Korthville's rigid military posture began to relax, despite his attempts to remain unmoved. When the cookies were ready, Jake offered one to the general. Korthville took a cautious bite, then stopped moving entirely. His crystal skin began cycling through colors that Jake had learned to associate with wonder and joy. "This is impossible," Korthville whispered, taking another bite. "How can something so small contain such powerful emotions?" "Because it was made with care," Jake explained. Every ingredient was chosen thoughtfully. Every step of the process was done with attention and respect. The result is not just food, but a gift of happiness from one being to another. Korthvel finished the entire cookie, then looked around at the hundreds of aliens watching him. For the first time in his long military career, the general smiled. "I understand now," he said. "This is not weakness. This is a different kind of strength." 5 years later, Jake stood in the great kitchen, formerly the Zephyrian throne room, watching alien children from dozens of species learning to cook together. The Empire had been transformed into the Galactic Culinary Federation, devoted to sharing food culture and peaceful cooperation across the stars. Overlord Vex, now called Chief Vex by everyone, approached with a message from Earth. Another aggressive alien empire had appeared at the edge of the galaxy, demanding tribute from inhabited worlds. "They call themselves the Dominion of Eternal Conquest," Chief Vex explained. "Their message is similar to the one we sent to Earth years ago." Jake smiled as he began gathering ingredients for his travel kit. He had developed new recipes since his first encounter with the Zephyrians, including fusion dishes that combined techniques from dozens of different worlds. "How long until their ships reach Federation space?" Jake asked. 3 days, Chief Vex replied. "Perfect," Jake said, packing spices and cooking equipment. "That gives me just enough time to prepare something special." As Jake prepared for his next culinary diplomatic mission, he reflected on how much his life had changed. He had started as a food truck owner, trying to make people happy with good tacos. Now he was an ambassador of flavor, using the universal language of delicious food to bring peace to the galaxy. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but Jake had learned that the most powerful force in it was not gravity or nuclear fusion. It was the simple act of sharing a meal with someone who was once a stranger. And through that sharing, discovering that differences in species and culture were far less important than the common desire for joy, comfort, and connection. Jake Martinez, former taco truck owner and current master of culinary arts for the Galactic Federation, was ready to change history once again, one recipe at a time.